So next speaker is Royoung Kim from the SKK University. And the title of her talk is Spatially Specific Reward Signals in Visual Areas During Closed-Loop Naturalistic Interaction. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Royoung from Sungkyunh University, Korea, and today I'll present our work on spatially specific reward signals in visual areas during closed-loop environment, closed-loop naturalistic interaction. We live in a closed-loop environment. That is, we agents observe the world via sensory systems, including vision, take actions based on the visual information, and these actions feed back into our perception. Our question is, what bridges vision and action during the closed-loop interaction? In the reinforcement learning framework, rewards act as this bridge. We believe reward bridges vision and action in our lives as well, based on 2 points. First, reward information plays an important role in action decisions during goal-directed actions. Second, previous animal studies have shown that the visual areas from the primary visual cortex to frontal eye field, or FEF, show sensitivity to reward. This implies that visual areas not only represent not only visual information, but also higher order cognitive processes, including reward information. Based on these points, we hypothesized that potential rewards would elicit spatially specific responses in visual areas to support efficient actions toward important stimuli. Let's consider a real-life example of this hypothesis. Imagine you are walking down the street. You'd encounter a variety of objects. While perceiving these objects in visual areas, reward information of each object would elicit responses specific to the object location, in addition to visually driven responses. This spatially specific signal would support efficient visually guided actions toward rewarding objects. To investigate our hypothesis, we used the following elements. The details of these elements will be presented in 3 parts. Let's start with closed-loop environment. My Center for Neuroscience Imaging Research in Korea, has been working on a large-scale neuroimaging dataset project called 17-NatPac. In this NatPac project, each participant performs various tasks. And one of the unique points of this project is that we developed novel naturalistic tasks, which are 3D video games set in a Minecraft environment. Among the new Minecraft-based 3D interactive games, we used shepherding tasks developed by the co-first author, Jiyoung. In this shepherding task, participants were instructed to herd as many sheep as possible to the goal location. The sheep die if they fall into puddles or are attacked by a fox, so participants should try hard to not lose them. To implement realistic collective behaviors of the sheep and herding in our task, we adopted computational model from a previous study developed based on a deep GPS data collected from a flock of sheep and a shepherding dog. During the scan, participants were able to freely navigate within the 3D environment using ML-compatible game controller. Eye tracking and physiological data were also collected during the scan. In the shepherding task, we focused on 2 conditions: reward loss and near loss. In both conditions, a sheep was approached a puddle, but in loss condition, the sheep eventually fell into the puddle, whereas in the near loss condition, the sheep was successfully moved away from the puddle. So the closed-loop environment was prepared. The next question is whether we can show beyond what is driven solely by the visual stimulus in the visual areas. To answer that question, we first predicted stimulus-driven activity. The first step was to model which parts of the visual field activate each voxel. In other words, we estimated population receptive field, or PRF, of each voxel using independent PRF experiments. We then predicted gaze contingent retinotopic input through 3 steps. First, we performed high-precision eye tracking to determine participants' gaze locations. Here, the dots are the gaze locations. Next, we relocated the visual stimuli centering on the gaze locations. Lastly, we calculated stimulus energy within the gaze-centered stimuli to determine the amount of activation each part of the stimuli would elicit. By applying the PRF to the retinotopic visual input, we predicted both signals solely based on the retinotopic visual input, the blue line here. Subtracting this from the actual signal, the red line, we got the residuals that cannot be explained by stimulus-driven model, which would include higher-order cognitive processes. Our question here was whether these residuals can be explained by spatial reward-related events. So the next step was to model the residuals with spatial reward. We modeled the residuals using ridge regression with these regressors. What we want to focus is this spatial reward loss regressor. To create spatial reward loss regressors, we divided the visual field into 8 radial beans and created loss regressors for each bean, each containing the timing information for a reward loss. That is a losing ship. For example, if a loss event occurred in this bean, it'd be indicated in this corresponding regressor. After regression, we plotted beta coefficients of those regressors across beans as tuning curves according to the voxel's target bean. The tuning curves with different target beans were aligned by shifting the target bean to the center and then averaged. Thus, the x-axis becomes the angular difference from the target bean, and therefore, as the tuning curve becomes sharper at the center, it means that the spatial specificity of the loss event is higher. Let me rotate this tuning curve. If we add the third axis indicating time, we can look at the temporal progression of reward loss events. Here, I'm plotting you the temporal progression of reward responses in V1. The 0 on the time axis indicates that the onset of the reward loss event, that is, when the ship was falling into the puddle. The axis starts from 40 years before the onset. The research shows that the tuning becomes sharper as the time approaches the onset of loss events. On the other hand, this pattern was not observed in near loss events. To quantify spatial specificity, we calculated the mean of the projected vectors of coefficients, and this gives us a single value that measures the sharpness of the tuning curve. So here I'm plotting you the sharpness of tuning curves, that is, spatial specificity of reward loss across time. V1 to V3 showed similar patterns of increasing spatial specificity. Beyond the visual cortex, we also looked at IPS and FEF, which are known to be involved in eye movements. And they also showed the increasing pattern across time. On the other hand, spatial specificity of near loss events didn't show an increasing pattern across time, by which we can conclude that the neural processing of actual and potential losses is different. So we found spatial specificity of reward loss in visual areas. The next question is, do these neural signatures have any functional significances? To answer this question, we also looked at its correlation with behavior. Here, the x-axis is the number of successful loss-avoidant behaviors where participants succeeded in saving a ship from falling into the puddle by taking action. Now, I'm showing you the correlation across RIs with each dot representing each participant's mean value across the entire experiment. The research shows that the higher the spatial specificity of reward responses, the more successful loss avoidant behaviors. This suggests that when our brain integrates reward information into visual representations, it helps us behave in ways that maximize rewards and minimize losses. To conclude, using an immersive naturalistic task, we discovered reward-specific spatial responses in visual areas and showed its correlation with behaviors. This study shows how perception and action and cognition are integrated in naturalistic settings, something that's rarely explored in conventional laboratory paradigms. I'd like to thank my lab and our collaborator, Kendra Kay. Thank you for listening, and if you want to know more about this project, please visit poster 2555 today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have some time for maybe one question. Does anyone in the audience want to come up to the mic? And there is at least one.
To what extent can you distinguish a specific thing about reward from just attention? Because obviously reward and the goals of the game will evoke attention as well.
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, it's really hard to, I think we all agree that it's really hard to dissociate reward and attention. So I think we can say this is more like reward-based attention, but our effort to differentiate this from the general attention, we also looked at the attention grabbing but not rewarding events as control. And we found that those events doesn't show this kind of spatial specificity. And also we looked at the functional connectivity between visual areas and nucleus accumbens, which is known to be involved in reward processing. And we found that during the reward loss event, the functional connectivity was high, was getting higher during the event between those two regions.
Thank you very much, and let's thank the speaker again.